told that Sebastian has escaped, and the woman warns that if anyone finds out, the project will be shut down. But that's when the scientist walks through the door. The coworker demands to know where he's been, and the man lies, saying he only went to pick up some belongings. But Linda doesn't believe it. She's found evidence he was abusing his invisibility, and threatens to report him to the science committee if he ever leaves again. He thinks she's bluffing, but the researcher makes it clear that he will be confined here indefinitely. Annoyed, the scientist returns to his room, but soon he's going to start his murder spree. The next morning, the team gathers at the lab as Matt shows them his latest findings. The man might have found a way to turn the scientist back to normal, but the simulation fails at the last second. They still don't have a cure, and the invisible man is going to be stuck like this forever if they don't find another breakthrough soon. Furious, Sebastian tries to figure out how to escape when he suddenly remembers there's a security monitor on the ceiling. The man realizes they're watching his room, but it gives him a brilliant idea. Acting quickly, he walks into the lab while one of the researchers isn't looking, and takes a bunch of computer components back to his room to...
How'd you guys meet again?
Dude, Muslim match.
You don't have to be Muslim.
Nah, don't want anybody on.
Anybody?
Wrong. More seasons of Terrific only on Hulu.
To sabotage the security camera. Later in the observation room, his coworker Frank feels someone touching his hair and quickly turns around. But when he checks the camera, he sees the invisible man laying on his bed. The guy doesn't know that Sebastian has looped the video feed and already broken out of the facility. Finally free, the man climbs up the fire escape of his ex-girlfriend's apartment and is shocked to see the woman with her coworker Matt. It makes him so jealous that he smashes the window in a fit of rage and quickly runs away. The researchers look outside to see who is spying on them, but there doesn't seem to be anyone there. Suspicious, the woman lunges for the phone and calls the lab, asking if the scientist is still in bed, but their coworker confirms the man has been here the whole time. Later, Sebastian returns to the facility, furious that his ex-girlfriend has moved on. Everything about this situation is driving him insane, but that's when the invisible dog starts barking at him. Acting out, he decides to approach the cage and brutally kills the animal to shut him up, but this is going to be a huge mistake. The next morning, Sarah here is doing her rounds when she notices that something is wrong. The invisible dog has somehow been killed, and the woman immediately goes to the scientist's room to find out what happened. Suspicious, she asks him if he noticed anything strange last night, and the man says he was asleep, but the woman doesn't believe him. Leaving the room, she tells the others about what she saw, and together they watch the surveillance footage, but there's no evidence Sebastian had anything to do with it. Okay, this was a huge mistake. Up until this point, the research team has been putting up with their boss's antics, and so far maintaining plausible deniability has worked in the man's favor. Nobody can prove that he's actually done anything wrong, but killing this dog has just changed that completely. This research lab is not only underground, it also can't be accessed by anyone not working on this project. The only entrance is this single elevator, and it's activated by voice command, so nobody else will be able to sneak inside. This is already enough to tell everyone that Sebastian here killed this dog, because the others wouldn't have any incentive to do this. If the woman was thinking clearly, she wouldn't bother asking him where he was last night, and it's not hard to assume that a genius scientist is capable of looping the security cameras. Now, it's important to point out how stupid this couple is at the moment. They're secretly having an affair, and don't want Sebastian to find out about it, but if they already know the man is capable of escaping the lab and has been constantly making passes at his ex-girlfriend, we can assume he won't be happy to find out who she's dating. If he's willing to do this to a dog, then you can be damn sure he's willing to push his enemy down a flight of stairs and kill him as long as he thinks he can get away with it. This man is in serious danger, and that's why if it were me, I would have kept this relationship a secret for as long as possible. Meeting up and laying around in bed is a surefire way of getting caught, and if there's reason to think our lives might be at stake, we shouldn't be taking unnecessary risks. At this point, what they should have done was added more precautionary measures to keep themselves safer, and instead of a surveillance system, they should have turned this place into a full-blown prison. Now, obviously, they don't have the skills or the time to start building a brand new environment for him, but the good news is that they don't have to. As I mentioned earlier, this place is already underground, with only one way out, and only people with security access can move around the lab. That's why the simplest solution is to delete his security clearance, override the doors to both his room and the hallways so that they remain locked, and have heat-sensing cameras installed into every single corner of the lab. If the man doesn't have clearance, this place effectively becomes a prison, and even though it will piss him off, we can't afford to let him out. These scientists weren't doing any of this, and it's about to backfire on them hard. That night, Linda heads back to her apartment, but that's when she suddenly hears a strange noise. Suspecting Sebastian is here, she throws a sheet into the air to catch him, but it falls to the floor. Nobody is there, but the woman is so terrified that she leaves as quickly as possible and heads back to the research facility. Arriving at the lab, she investigates the scientist's room and discovers that he isn't in bed. It makes her realize that he tampered with the camera, and she opens it up to find it completely rewired. Picking up the phone, she tells her co-workers to gather at the facility and reveals the scientist hacked the surveillance footage. The situation is getting out of control, and with no better options, the researcher insists they need to tell the committee about what's going on. None of them realize the Invisible Man has overheard everything, and he's going to do whatever it takes to stop them. Later that night, Sebastian goes to the project supervisor's house, where he finds the researchers telling the man everything. He explains he'll have to report this to the Pentagon immediately, but this is the last time they'll ever see him again. Walking back inside, he tries to make a call, but that's when the line suddenly goes dead. It's strange. But then he notices something else. His back door is swinging shut like somebody just walked out, and the old man goes to investigate but doesn't see anyone. Confused, he lights his pipe and is about to head back inside when the Invisible Man appears behind him, pushing the supervisor into the pool. Diving in after the guy, Sebastian holds the man under the water until he finally goes limp, and the scientist leaves no trace that he was ever there. The next morning, Linda arrives at the lab, but is confused that the supervisor hasn't contacted them yet. Frustrated, she decides to call the old man, but the person on the other end tells her that he mysteriously died last night. Shocked, the woman tries to contact a general at the Pentagon, but suddenly the connection cuts out. Someone has sabotaged their communication systems, and they head out to alert security, but when they enter the elevator, it won't accept their passwords. All of the authorization codes have been changed, and that means they're trapped here with an invisible psychopath. The researchers tell the others what just happened, and the team tries hacking into the security system, but that's when they see that the only person who can use the elevator now is the Invisible Man. The group has no choice but to confront him, and heading out to his room, they bring along a few pairs of thermal goggles, but Janice isn't so lucky. She walks back to grab one for herself, but as she goes to join the others, Sebastian suddenly appears out of nowhere and murders the woman in cold blood. Okay, this is terrifying. The man has just started a murder spree, and he's about to go after every single person in this building. The scientists had the chance to make Sebastian their prisoner, but they waited too long, and he used the same strategy on them instead. The good news is that as long as we protect the control room, then we can figure out where the man is and flush him out. The first thing to do in this situation is gather all of the crew members here to make sure we are accounted for. It's easily the safest place in the building, because it has two entrances, a reinforced steel door, and surveillance feeds for every room in the facility. If we let the Invisible Man get control of this room, then we're screwed, and that means we have to protect it at all costs if we want to survive.
Dragon Adventure, baby! Come get it! Welcome to my Wonderland!
Now, it's important to remember that even though his body is see-through, the man is still flesh and blood. The serum allows light waves to pass through him, but he's completely solid like everyone else. This means as long as he's forced to interact with physical objects, we'll be able to see Sebastian's position in any room, and this strategy will give us the upper hand. A good way to use this against him is to fill the room with smoke, so they can see the particles hit his body. This is something that they try later with a fire extinguisher, but the problem is that it also makes it harder for us to see anything as well, and that's why if it were me, I would take this strategy to the next level. Instead of using smoke, I would set a trap by pouring water into the rooms and flooding the lab. It might sound extreme, but it gives us an overwhelming advantage, because in order for the Invisible Man to reach us, he would need to walk through the water. If the rooms are flooded, there would be no way for him to hide his location, and it gives us a better chance of taking the man down. We already have heat vision goggles, but they can be easily damaged, and it won't take much for Sebastian to eventually find all of the heat sensors of the building and destroy them. So having a foolproof method of detecting his movement is going to give us the best chance of staying alive. As an extra precaution, I would also gather the medical equipment and pile everything up against the far wall so that the man can't try walking or jumping on platforms above the water to reach us. Meanwhile, the team walks into his room and finds no traces of him anywhere. Frustrated, Linda picks up a phone and tells him to stop hiding, but that's when they hear his voice on the intercom. The Invisible Man reveals that he killed the supervisor so no one will be coming to help, and makes it clear he won't let them leave this place alive. Suddenly, they notice that one of their co-workers is missing and run back to search for her, but there's nobody in the lab. Using thermal goggles, the woman spots a heat signature in a locker, and the team thinks it might be Sebastian. But as soon as they open it, their co-worker's dead body falls out. The research team is horrified that the scientist would murder someone like this, and Linda tells the technician to hack the computer system so they can make new access codes. Everyone else will hunt down Sebastian, and Linda's got a plan to beat him. Activating the motion detectors throughout the lab, they track down the Invisible Man's location, and two of the researchers head out to confront him. But as the men try to corner the guy, they're told the scientist has disappeared on the motion detectors. They don't know where he is, but that's when Carter spots a heat signature behind some pipes. His co-worker sneaks up and fires his tranquilizer gun, hoping it'll hit Sebastian, but it's a false alarm. The heat they saw was coming from a floor vent, but that's when this guy hears his friend choking, and turns around to see him being strangled in the air. Knowing the Invisible Man is lying on the pipe above, the researcher tries to shoot him down, and hits a temperature gauge that sprays hot steam directly into the scientist's face. Furious, he throws their co-worker, and the man falls into a lever, cutting his throat open. Matt reports what just happened, but Linda wants him to get out of there before the Invisible Man kills him next. That's when the pipe breaks, and Sebastian comes running out of the steam, pushing his co-worker over. Getting back up, the researcher chases after him, but there's nothing Matt can do to stop him from closing the door. To make matters worse, the evil scientist is still on his side of the hallway, but is cleverly using the heat from the vents to avoid being detected. Terrified, Matt tries firing another dart, but realizes that he's all out of ammo. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, the man starts spraying it into the air to find where Sebastian is, as the Invisible Man threatens him for hooking up with his ex-girlfriend. The man is overcome with jealousy and punches the researcher, knocking him to the ground. That's when the door opens and Linda rushes forward so she can drag her boyfriend back to safety as the doors quickly close shut. Okay, this is getting out of hand. These are some of the most intelligent scientists in the world, but even though two people have been murdered, they've decided to make this fight about a girl. It's incredibly stupid, but the bad decisions don't end there. Moments earlier, this researcher made the mistake of firing the last of his ammo at nothing, and I think it's fair to say nobody here will be winning a Nobel Prize. Now, as basic as it seems, getting into a fist fight might actually be a much better idea than it sounds. So far, the biggest problem has been trying to figure out where the Invisible Man is hiding, but ironically, getting into a fist fight actually makes this problem a lot easier to solve. If the man is taking swings at you, then it gives us a rare opportunity to know exactly where he is. That's why if I were in this situation, I would take off my shirt, and as soon as we confirmed his position, I would tackle him to the ground. Then, we can quickly hold the shirt over the man's face, and this will let us aim our punches without accidentally hitting the floor. Now, this strategy would make a lot of sense if we wanted to fight fairly, but we can't overlook the fact that the Hollow Man is fighting in his birthday suit. This guy is trying to walk out with his invisible out, and it might be the biggest mistake yet. If Matt here was thinking clearly, he should have tackled him to the ground and grabbed him by the jewels to make sure he couldn't get away. Then, if he had saved his one last tranquilizer dart, he could have stabbed him with it and ended the fight. It's also worth remembering that earlier, when Sebastian first woke up from the experiment, he complained about how bright the lights were. The reason is because his eyelids had become transparent, but this was something nobody considered taking advantage of. If they wanted to hunt this guy down, it would have made a lot of sense to have everyone bring flashlights with them. As simple as it sounds, this would be extremely effective to stop Sebastian from sneaking up on us, because his entire body is transparent. That means even if he raises his hand to cover his face, the light will shine straight into his eyeballs. The only way to avoid it is by looking away, and this makes it a very useful tactic to prevent him from ambushing us. Meanwhile, the rest of the team find their injured co-worker, and the redhead tells the technician to stay with them while she gets supplies. She leaves him alone in the hallway and heads to the supply room, but that was her biggest mistake. The woman grabs some bags of paint, but as she's about to leave, the door suddenly closes. Terrified, she realizes that the Invisible Man is here, but doesn't realize that the Invisible Man has snuck behind her, and there's no way to survive. The remaining researchers find their co-worker and ask where the woman is. Frustrated, he tells them she's in the supply room, and the researchers head over there as quickly as possible. As they walk inside, they discover Sarah's dead body in a corner of the room, and it's clear the Invisible Man killed her, but they don't realize he's still here. Suddenly, the scientist attacks their co-worker with a crowbar, murdering him in cold blood. Horrified, Matt runs in to check on the man, but that was his biggest mistake. He's stabbed in the gut by Sebastian and collapses to the ground as his girlfriend rushes over to help. That's when the scientist shuts the door and locks them in from the outside before turning the temperature down to sub-zero. It's a...
Oh, that's our pick. Yep, I pick you.
only a matter of time until they freeze to death, and the boyfriend is already going into shock. Desperate, the woman tries breaking the window with the crowbar, but it's useless. The glass won't shatter, but then she comes up with a clever idea. She quickly rigs an electromagnet out of the materials in the room and hooks it up to a defibrillator. Pressing the device to the door, the woman magnetically moves the bar out of the way and manages to set them free. She drags her boyfriend out of the room and immediately sets a barrel full of paper on fire. It should keep him warm until he wakes up, and she leaves the room with a tank of flammable gas. Meanwhile, Sebastian is in the lab creating a compound and tests it out, watching it explode on impact. After mixing more of them, he puts the vials into a device and sets a timer. In 5 minutes, this whole place is going to blow up, and the Invisible Man walks into the elevator confident that he'll escape, but that's when Linda catches up. Furious, she lights the end of the gas tank and sprays the murderer with fire, burning him alive. Okay, Linda is a badass. After getting locked inside a freezer, she made an electromagnet out of a box of scraps and escaped. It's clear the woman is resourceful, but unfortunately, she didn't use any of her brains to help keep her boyfriend alive. The first mistake was pulling the crowbar out of his stomach, because if it had pierced any of the man's major blood vessels, then leaving it in would help plug the wounds to minimize his blood loss. As counterintuitive as it might seem, she should have left him there and told him not to move until she either kills the Invisible Man or help arrives. The next mistake was starting a fire to help his hypothermia. Even if there was a way to contain the flames, placing an unconscious person in an enclosed space with a fire is not a good idea. With flames this high, it's very possible that the man's clothes could catch fire, and the better decision would have been to move him away from the cold air, take off his wet clothes, then wrap him in the dry clothes of her other dead co-workers. The bad news is this would definitely take more time, and since this place is going to explode in less than 5 minutes, the best decision would actually be to leave the man for dead. Now, this woman doesn't know that there's a bomb yet, but if Sebastian thinks he's killed all of his co-workers, then there's obviously no reason for him to stick around. He's also the only person that still has the access key to the elevator, and that means if we don't stop him, we'll be stuck down here forever. That's why if I were her, I would run to the elevator before he leaves us here and make him an offer he can't refuse. It's important to remember that this man has been trying to get back together with Linda for the entire movie. At dinner, he asked if they could make it work again, and he made several passes at her in the lab. He was also curious enough to spy on her apartment, and with this much consistency, it's clear we could use this to our advantage. That's why the best thing to do is make a deal to save our lives, and offer to get back together with him. Now, this man is a genius, so it's very unlikely he'll believe a word we're saying, but the good news is that he doesn't have to. The man is driven by pure ego, and would relish in the opportunity to make his point as dramatically as possible. The best trap for a narcissist is to get them to talk about themselves, and if we hand him this opportunity, he won't be able to resist. With this in mind, all we need to do is catch him in the elevator and distract him long enough to slice his neck with a scalpel. As long as he's already spoken his voice recognition security code to use the elevator, then we'll be able to ride it up to the surface and call for help as he bleeds out. He leaps out of the elevator and desperately tries to put himself out, but the woman chases after him. She keeps on burning him as he takes off his disguise until the invisible killer manages to run away, vanishing into thin air. Thinking quickly, Linda fires at the sprinklers and sets them off throughout the facility. The water should reveal the scientist's outline, but the researcher has no idea he's right behind her. Sneaking up, he knocks the woman to the ground and steps on Linda's throat, suffocating her to death. But at the last second, Matt swings a crowbar at his head. The serial killer collapses to the ground, and the researcher seizes the opportunity to help his girlfriend up. But as he's walking away, the Invisible Man gets back to his feet. He tries to attack them from behind, but Matt pushes him away, and the crowbar lands straight into an electrical circuit, shocking him. The scientist is out cold, and the others quickly head to the lab to see if he sabotaged anything. They discover the makeshift bomb that he set up, but there's a problem. There's less than 30 seconds until it goes off, and the survivors have no choice but to use the emergency ladder in the elevator. They both manage to climb up and get into the shaft, but they're still in trouble. The explosion tears apart the facility, and the shockwave from the blast launches the elevator carriage straight up. The survivors flatten themselves against the walls, narrowly avoiding getting smashed to death, but then they realize it's coming back down. The researchers are terrified, but the elevator luckily stops before reaching them. They have a chance to get out of here and quickly head for the surface, with no idea that the Invisible Man is right behind them. He latches onto the woman and pulls her off the ladder, sending them falling onto the elevator. The murderer demands one last kiss from her, and the woman gives in, but secretly grabs a hold of the cable. At the last second, she steps on a lock and detaches the wire from the elevator, sending the Invisible Man falling to his death. With that, the nightmare is finally over, and the survivors are able to leave the facility, thankful that they don't have to look at Kevin Bacon's bacon strip for the rest of their lives. But what do you...
is no...
House of the Dragon Episode 5 has a royal wedding, so naturally there's politics, drama, and a murder. What happens and what does it mean? This video has no spoilers for Hot D beyond Episode 5. The opening sequence is a symbolic family tree showing the bloodline of House Targaryen, and it's slightly changed across episodes. The symbol for Alicent Hightower now has a bloodline connecting to her husband, King Viserys, and there are two bloodlines coming from her, representing her son Aegon and her daughter Helaena. The symbol for Rhaenyra now connects to Laenor Velaryon, who she marries in this episode. In the previous episode, Viserys told Daemon to go back to his wife in the Vale. So now in the Vale, we finally meet Daemon's estranged wife, Rhea Royce. House Royce is famous for their ancient bronze armor engraved with runes of the First Men. So Rhea's clothes are decorated with runes, which the show's creators copied from Wikipedia. The Royce bronze armor and their history as Bronze Kings is why Daemon calls Rhea his bronze bitch. In Game of Thrones, House Royce is led by Bronze Yohn Royce. He's the father of Waymar Royce, who gets killed by White Walkers in Episode 1. The Royce Castle is Runestone, just up the coast from King's Landing. So Daemon arrives and finds Rhea, and Rhea is immediately suspicious of him, glancing over her shoulder. She insults Daemon, saying that he should have sex with a sheep, because previously Daemon said that in the Vale the sheep are prettier than the women. Rhea mocks Daemon, saying that Viserys rejected Daemon by making Rhaenyra heir to the throne instead of him, and Rhea says that her marriage to Daemon is still unconsummated. They've never had sex. Rhea says that Daemon couldn't finish. And we know that Daemon has a history of sexual dysfunction, of not being able to have sex with Mysaria and Rhaenyra. So Rhea really knows how to hurt Daemon's insecurities about sex and family. She's just as sharp-tongued as he is. So it's easy to see how Rhea and Daemon's personalities clashed and their marriage failed. Daemon comes close, Rhea grabs her bow, her horse rears up, Daemon touches it, and it falls, so that Rhea is crushed, paralyzing her. Then Daemon kills Rhea with a rock, to make it look like she died by accident, falling off her horse. The books say that Rhea died in a tragic mishap, falling and cracking her head on a rock. Daemon was on the Stepstones at the time, so in the books, Rhea's death may really have been an accident. In the show, it is ambiguous whether Daemon came here planning to kill Rhea or if he just took the opportunity. But his hated wife is dead, which means that Daemon is now free to remarry, whether for love or for lust or for power. Otto Hightower leaves King's Landing. Viserys fired Otto as Hand of the King because Otto had manipulated Viserys and undermined Rhaenyra to try and make Otto's grandson Aegon heir to the throne. Otto blames his daughter Alicent for getting him fired, because Alicent sided with Rhaenyra and said Rhaenyra was innocent of having sex with Daemon. But Otto says that Alicent shouldn't support Rhaenyra, because if Rhaenyra takes the throne after Viserys dies, there'll be war. Many lords won't accept a female ruler, and would prefer Alicent's son Aegon on the throne. Otto says Rhaenyra will need to kill Alicent's children, because they're a threat to her claim. Otto says they must get Aegon on the throne, or else Rhaenyra will destroy them. They must win the Game of Thrones or die. Otto loves Alicent and wants to protect her, but Alicent's only in this dangerous situation because Otto pushed Alicent to marry Viserys and pushed for Aegon to be heir. Alicent went along with her family's ambitions, and now she and her children are in danger. Larys Strong, the Clubfoot, is the son of Lionel Strong and the brother of Harwin Strong. Larys tells Alicent, subtly and indirectly, that Maester Mellos gave Rhaenyra moon tea, hinting that Rhaenyra lied to Alicent and that she really did have sex. Larys says Alicent can't rely on Rhaenyra and that Larys will be Alicent's ally. So Larys creates conflict here, turning Alicent against Rhaenyra, and positions himself as a friend to the Queen. It's similar to how